I was a devoted housewife for 40 years. I cooked every meal, mended every piece of clothing, and never asked for anything in return. But one evening, while doing the dishes, I accidentally overheard them calling me the unpaid maid. I didn't cry and I didn't argue. 3 weeks later, they had to sign a lease, written by my own hand. I moved in with my son after selling the old house, the one with the clock that chimed every morning at 7, the one where my husband and I once argued over an uncapped fish sauce bottle, the one where I cried in the bathroom the night he passed away. I didn't move because I had nowhere else to go. I moved because Lucas said, "Mom, you shouldn't be alone all the time." Naively, I believed that meant, "You still matter to us." The day I arrived, they had already set up a small room for me, right next to the storage area. Elise, my daughter-in-law, called it the extra room. I didn't question it. I'd slept on cold stone floors at my parents' house before. All I needed was a place to rest my back. At our first dinner together, I added an extra chair to the table. Elise smiled and said, "You can eat later, Mom. It'll be more comfortable that way. The table's a bit cramped." I nodded quietly and took my bowl down to the kitchen. I'd once cooked for 6 people with only 3 potatoes. But that night, I sat by the sink, eating cold leftovers I'd scooped up myself. And no one remembered to ask, "Mom, have you eaten yet?" I don't blame Elise. She's busy, working, raising kids, staying fit. I used to be her, except I had no one to hand things off to. Day by day, I started to disappear. No one called me out for family photos. No one asked what I wanted to eat. Every morning, I got up early to cook breakfast for my grandson, but when he woke up, he glanced over his shoulder and said, "Mom said don't let Grandma force me to eat breakfast anymore." I'm not a hero. I don't want to make a fuss. All I ever wanted was to see my grandson smile, to see my son enjoy a peaceful meal. But then one day, as I was washing dishes, hands still covered in soap, color soaked from the low sink, I overheard Elise say, "I'm getting tired. It's like we have a live-in maid who works for free. And who even hired her?" Lucas chuckled softly. "Well, yeah, fair enough." I froze. The hot water kept running. A spoon dropped into the sink. My eyes didn't water, but it felt like something clawed its way through my chest. Free maid. That's what they called me, as if I had no name, no past, no soul. For 40 years, I forgot my own birthday just to remember my husband's doctor appointments. For 40 years, I wiped away tears so I could teach my child how to write his first word. I cleaned the house, watched the kids, sent money, mailed gifts, made calls. I didn't do it because anyone asked. I did it because I believed that's what mothers do. But what I got in return was the same worth as a free item in a promotional bundle, something included but never appreciated. That night I said nothing. I simply went upstairs, opened my old savings book, checked the current real estate listings, and messaged the agent I had worked with years ago. I didn't need to cry. I had cried all I could at 42, the year my husband went into the hospital and never came back out. Now, I have no more tears left. I have money. I have a name. And I have limits. After that night, after hearing those words, it's like having a live-in maid for free. I didn't scream, didn't slam doors, didn't throw dishes. I just stood there, hands still covered in soap, staring at the scratch on the edge of the sink. A scratch I made a few days ago when I dropped a knife. No one asked if I was hurt. No one remembered that ever since I moved in, that sink had never been cleaner. I understood something simple, yet painfully clear. Silence is the language of those who've learned that words won't save them anymore. The next day, Elise didn't apologize. Lucas didn't say anything. But I didn't wait. I started to retreat, not with my feet, but with my thoughts. I stopped making morning coffee, stopped folding towels neatly in the cabinet, stopped reminding my granddaughter to wear her jacket. I let their life return to what it was before I came. No mother, no housekeeper, no one to make up for what they lacked. And then things unraveled faster than I expected. A week later, Elise called Lucas from work. "Why hasn't anyone gone grocery shopping? Didn't Mom go?" I thought she still handled that. There was barely anything to eat last night. I heard them. I still heard everything. But I didn't get up anymore. I wanted to see, without me, would they remember how to live? Lucas got irritated. Elise got frustrated. They started arguing. The kitchen suddenly felt smaller because dinner wasn't ready. Mia, my granddaughter, ate dry toast with cold milk. She scrunched up her face and asked, "Why didn't Grandma make her food today?" Elise exhaled coldly. "Grandma's tired. She needs rest." No, I wasn't tired. I was clearer than I'd ever been. It's just that, for the first time in 40 years, I chose not to serve. On the 12th day since that night, I started meeting with a realtor. No one noticed. I still wore my gray coat, my felt hat, and left early in the morning, just like I used to when going grocery shopping. I went to see a small house at the end of the street. The owner was going through a divorce and needed to sell quickly. The house wasn't big, but it had potential. And most importantly, I had enough cash. "You'd like to keep the buyer's identity confidential, correct?" the realtor asked. I nodded. The quieter, the better. 3 days later, I closed the deal. Another week passed, and Lucas and Elisa's lease on the current house was ending. They were looking for a new place. "Call the old landlord," Elise said. "Ask about renting it again this month. If not, we'll need a temporary spot." I was in my own room, the one they called the spare room. I was folding sweaters into a small suitcase. I knew the time had come. I left a simple note on the dining table. Next to a vase I'd arranged myself with dried flowers from the backyard. "Here is the contact information of the new landlord. You can call to discuss rental terms. They will meet with you directly on Thursday to sign the lease. P.S. This house now belongs to Mom." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. They would recognize that handwriting because for 40 years, every note in that house had been written by me. That evening I left. Without a goodbye, I carried my old suitcase, stepped over the doorway I had cleaned for years, with my hands, my knees, and the best years of my life. And for the first time I crossed it not to go shopping, not to return to my room, but to start a new life. One where no one would ever call me a free maid again. Lucas and Elise arrived at the real estate office. They were well-dressed, looking rushed, but still polite. They needed a house, urgently. Their daughter was about to start a new school year. The landlord had insisted on meeting them in person for verification. Lucas whispered, "Let's hope she's easygoing." Elise scoffed. "As long as she's not one of those who demand 3 months deposit, I'm good." They had no idea the new landlord didn't want a deposit. She just wanted history to be rewritten. Exactly as it truly happened, the office door opened. I stepped in, calmly in a white blouse, a small leather bag over my shoulder, and eyes that no longer waited for anything. Lucas shot up from his chair. "Mom!" Elise lost a breath. "What? This is your house." I didn't say a word. I simply opened my bag, took out 3 rental contracts, and placed them on the table. "I am the owner of property 104B on Green Hill Road," I said to the agent. These 2 were the former tenants. "I'm here to confirm the updated terms." I didn't use the word son. I didn't call her daughter-in-law, because they once called me the unpaid maid. So now I signed only as the owner, nothing more, nothing less. Lucas stammered, "Mom, why are you doing this? Why didn't you say anything?" I looked straight into his eyes, the same eyes I once watched feverishly when I held him through a night of high fever, the same boy who borrowed money from me during his first year of college, because I used to say too much. But no one listened. Elise interrupted, her face turning pale. "What do you mean? You're making us rent our own home." I smiled, not kindly, not fakely, just the smile of someone who had nothing left to lose. "It's not our home. It's my home." Elise turned away, her voice low and bitter. "So this is revenge?" I shook my head. "No, this is the invoice. For 40 years without a salary, without a thank you, for all those cold meals under the sink, for every time I was treated like I didn't exist." Lucas lowered his head. Elise said nothing. I turned the contract around and slid it toward them. "If you want to stay here, sign. If not, there's a waiting list for this house." The silence stretched, tight as wire. Elise's hand trembled as she picked up the pen. Lucas looked at me with a gaze I hadn't seen in years, the gaze of a son standing before a mother who no longer bowed her head. They signed, each stroke of ink rewriting an old chapter, but this time in real ink, not tears. Once finished, I nodded and gathered the documents. I won't interfere with your lives. But don't call me Mom just because you're short one housekeeper. I stood, never looking back. Stepped outside. A light rain had started. The wind was cool, as if the sky, too, knew this wasn't a sad day. It was the day justice got its signature. That evening, I went back to the apartment I had rented for myself, small but full of light. No one called me the maid. No one asked me to cook. I placed a vase of fresh flowers on the table, not decoration, but real, living flowers. Just like me now. I didn't wait for them to call back. Didn't wait for anyone to bring me a sweet cake, a card, or even a belated apology. I just sat there in an empty apartment, listening to the slow ticking of the clock, and knew for the first time in 40 years that this ticking belonged to me. I'm not a remarkable person. I've begged before. I've pleaded. Let me stay a few more days. I won't be a bother. I used scrubbing the floors to cover up the pain of being forgotten. Used hot porridge to patch the cracks between me and my son. But after signing that contract, I understood something. If I kept trying a little harder, even I wouldn't recognize myself anymore. I started my morning not cooking for anyone. I didn't care about portions, sodium levels, or anyone's eating habits but my own. The first breakfast I made for myself was a crisp slice of bread, spread with salted butter, served with black tea, sharp, just like who I've become. I opened my old notebook, not to write a grocery list, but to write something new. I'm no longer living to keep others warm. I'm learning to light my own fire. 3 days later, Elise sent a message. It was short. Can you come visit Mia? She misses you. I read it, but didn't reply right away. Not because I was angry, but because I needed to check with my heart. Was I softening, or did I truly want to go back? That evening, I stopped by Mia's house, not as the woman who used to cook there, but no longer the one who could be taken for granted. Mia hugged me and whispered into my shirt, "Grandma, I miss your hands peeling apples." I held her close, then stood up. Lucas tried to speak, but I raised my hand first. We don't need to revisit the past. But remember, from now on, I'm no longer the free option. He nodded, said nothing. For the first time, I saw real regret in my son's eyes. Not because he lost a cook, but because he lost a mother he once thought would always belong to him. That night, I went home, lit a scented candle. No one called me. No one needed me to do anything. I sat alone in my small kitchen, listening to my own music, sipping my own wine. There were no clinking dishes, no children whining, no commands from upstairs, just me and the feeling of no longer being the unpaid help. I'm not happy in a fairy tale kind of way. I didn't get tearful hugs, no one apologized with cake and birthday gifts, but I reclaimed a life where I'm no longer disappearing inside it. I used to be the extra chair at the dinner table. Now I'm the host seat. No one needs to offer me a place anymore. I pour my own tea, fold my own napkin, and if anyone wants to join me, they'd better appreciate that seat. I used to believe that if I was good enough, sacrificed enough, endured enough, they would look back and love me. But the truth is, no amount of enough can compare to being needed. And to my son, his mother only had value as long as she was useful. After that day, I returned to the old house to visit Mia. I never went back. I turned down the awkward dinners, the small talk messages. I had lived 40 years in a fog, wondering, do they really love me? I don't plan to spend the next 40 waiting for confirmation. A month later, I received a small package, no sender's name. Inside was a bundle of yellowed papers, letters I had written to Lucas during his college years, exam schedules, reminders to wear warm clothes, $20 bills tucked in corners, folk remedies for colds. I thought he had thrown them all away, but he kept them, quietly, and now returned them. There was a note clipped on top, the handwriting shaky, clearly written in a hurry. Mom, I know I've made you sad for many years, but every night I read these letters again. I remember you at the bus stop, that hot sticky rice in your hand. I never said thank you. I'm sorry. Lucas. I held the note, sat down, and exhaled softly. I didn't cry. I'm past the age of crying over a single sentence. These days, I value a well-timed word more than 1,000 belated gifts. I didn't call back. I didn't write a reply. I simply gathered the letters, tied them with a small string, and wrote a line on the cover. Feelings reopened. Wounds are stitching. Mom's still here, but no longer bowing. That evening, I arranged flowers. Not for a family dinner table, not to beautify the house for someone else's praise. I arranged them for me, a simple bouquet, purple asters, a few silver leaves, a touch of dried lavender. They weren't flashy, but they were proud, resilient, just like me now. The next morning, I wrote one sentence on a card and hung it in the living room. This is no longer a house of service. This is a place for those who are grateful to stay. I don't know if Lucas and Elise will ever truly change. I no longer place emotional bets on people who once treated a mother's love as a given. But I do know this. I don't need to be forgiven. I need to be remembered as a person, not a role. What do you think? Have you ever felt like you were treated as an unpaid maid in your own family? Have you ever forgiven just because you were afraid of losing someone? Or have you walked away just to keep what's left of yourself? Backhand index pointing right, leave a comment below. Because sometimes a painful story is exactly what someone else needs to know they're not alone.